Welcome back to the Developer Relations Activity Patterns.
This is going on
podcast.
the blooper reel. Blooper reel.
I know.
Reel.
It's the hardest. It is the hardest podcast, the worst podcast name that you can think of. So
we can call it
DevRel Activity Patterns podcast. Okay.
It's the Drapcast.
The Drapcast.
The Drapcast. That's what it is,
yes.
gents.
And now we're the Drap Pack.
Ooh,
yes, we're the Drap Pack.
Ooh, nice.
And
it's a foursome either way. The Drap Pack.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the Drap Pack.
I get to be Frank Sinatra.
Okay, so let's talk DevRel. So welcome everyone. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go down and like it, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your grandma.
Everyone.
My wife read the first chapter of the book.
Wow.
Yep. I asked her, she goes, what should I do? I go, can you read the first chapter? Ted wrote that one, but I said,
Don't admit that.
But she understood. She goes, I think I understand what DevRel does now. And I went, oh, that's good that you kind of understand what I did and what people do in that role. So, but yeah. So like us, tell us if you're listening to this in any other place. I don't think it's any other place now. We don't have an RSS feed or do audio on this. I think it's just YouTube only for right now. But yeah, welcome. We are going to do blog post. So I think I actually wrote most of this. I think this was one of my patterns that I wrote. So you guys probably critiqued it and did wordsmithing on it, but yeah, this was one of the more entertaining and fun patterns to write about, because blog posts and writing is something that I think DevRel people do quite often. It's kind of in the wheelhouse, and it's one of those things that pretty much all DevRel people do. So I think everyone has some good experiences, some bad experiences, and yeah. What do you think about this pattern?
Part of the thing is writing still has an advantage over video. In that it still has several advantages over video, right? And, I might be showing, the gray in my beard here a little bit, but it's far easier to Google, right? You get far more in the way of SEO results from a blog post than you do from, videos of any length whatsoever. And, quite honestly, it's a lot easier to skim. People can read and skim a blog post much more quickly than they can do so with a video. And frankly, that holds for both carbon-based life forms as well as silicon-based life forms, right? So AI agents can pick up your blog post information and incorporate that as part of their context or as part of their knowledge base or whatever they're using, as part of their, their agentic conceptualization of things. But the other thing is, honestly, the blog post to me is kind of, it's table stakes realistically at this point in the industry, right? If you are in a career of, around DevRel, if you want to be a developer advocate, you have to be able to write. You have to be able to communicate. And for a lot of folks, the entry point there is to write a blog post, because blogs have that category, they have that characteristic of being entirely anarchic. anybody can stand up a blog anywhere, right? Used to be, like 20 years ago when blogs first started, there was one place. Woody, maybe you remember, what was Radio Userland or something like that?
Yeah.
Do you remember that website?
Yeah. There were a few. There was like one that all the .NET bloggers went to.
Yeah.
It was Radio something.
But then there was
Radio
Blogger,
Userland,
right? Blogger and
yeah,
Blogspot.
something like that. It was a place where they would let you write your blog, and I think they pushed ads into
well, they went through several models, by the time it finally shut down. But, in the olden days.
Oh, no, it was LOS. It was LOS. It was something Spanish. It was Los Amigos.
In the Java space, there was Bloxsom, BLOXSOM. A lot of people, did blogs there. But I mean, the larger point here is, it used to be that blogs, you had to go use an existing service to do blogs, and they all aggregated each other, et cetera. But very quickly, people figured out, okay, the magic of a blog is in the RSS feed. And so I can stand up a blog anywhere as long as I get onto other people's RSS feeds. And so this is, particularly for people who are interested in getting started in DevRel, this is one of the things I will frequently point out, is it takes roughly zero amount of energy to get a blog spun up, particularly if you do something in the cloud. Yep. You could do something with GitHub Pages. You can do something with JBake. You can do, this is really not that difficult. And it serves as kind of a example of your technical prowess to say, look, I figured out how to take this static site generator and apply it to some markdown and generate some HTML and then put that with a CNAME alias so that now you can go to, blog McAllister McAllister.com. And, if right there, right, if I'm getting ready to hire somebody for a DevRel position, if they have their own blog, that tells me something, right? That automatically gives them a leg up over somebody who doesn't, in the same way that somebody who hasn't yet established their GitHub account and has some public repos for people to look at. Right. I mean, it's table stakes, particularly if you're at a company that's trying to, sell anything. You have to have a blog. It's just.
Yeah.
Well, any type of content, like, so in DevRel, large part of the job, right, is content creation, whether it's written, video, public speaking. However, it all boils back to storytelling.
Yeah.
And all of that boils back to writing, right? Like everything starts with writing. And so a blog post, like you're saying, is the foundation for you and your skill set. And then it branches all off from there. Because everything you do, whether it's a talk, whether it's a video, whether it's a short, you're still just telling a story about something, whether you learn something, whether you're teaching something. And so blog posts are that beginning point. And that point that, as you all have been mentioning, is searchable, it's findable, it's easy to spin up. I mean, so it is the foundation.
And if you're DevRel with software development, you don't share code in a video, where you can, the best place to share code examples and other programming constructs is naturally in a blog, or we'll talk about articles later pattern. But a blog post is that place where you can share your ideas, and you don't even have to stand up a blog anymore. I mean, there's Medium, there's Substack, so there's other ways that you can do it. I kind of like Substack.
I'm gonna jump in here real quick.
Sure.
The big thing that a lot of people need to be careful of, if you stand it up on, for example, Medium, is
They
intellectual
own it.
property ownership.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
I've
why
known a
everyone,
couple of people who wanted
everyone
to take,
left.
they wanted to take their content, they wanted to host it themselves. Because particularly when Medium went from free to paid, they were like, okay, well, I'm just going to, how do I export all of this? And the Medium folks said, oh, no, you don't quite understand. That's not yours to export. That's ours.
Terms of service.
Yeah. So, I don't know the terms of service with Substack, and any of the other services out there. The key thing is, look, if you work, let me back up. If you are working for a company, then starting a company blog, which again, the best time to do that, the better time to do it was 10 years ago when the company first started. The second best time is today, right? Every company needs to have a blog. But if you're starting that up, if you're in the position of spinning that up, you absolutely need it to be on a property that the company owns, right? Because that's company intellectual property, and it's got to be on a company web property. You just really can't. You can get away with it on Medium for a while, but eventually your various goals are going to conflict, and then all of that content will be lost to you effectively.
Yeah,
If you're
I
spinning
agree.
a blog, if you're spinning up a blog for yourself, okay, that's a different story. And I know a lot of people are finding that they like the Medium infrastructure because it has a fair amount of things. It makes it easier to do, and especially editing and whatnot. But again, they own your content, and frankly, I think it's a good. I think it's a good measure of one's technical ability to say, I'm going to do something. When Scott and I were at Smartsheet, when we spun up a blog engine, we specifically wanted it to be hosted in GitHub so that anybody could just commit a file to it and it would just automatically get published, RSS feed, the whole 9 yards, which is a good way to make sure that you're demonstrating that you understand CI/CD and pipelines and all of that kinds of stuff.
Well, and you're working in an open standard, which is Markdown. More than likely, everything is Markdown to HTML. So yeah, I agree. I'm just saying there are other. I mean, in my personal, I do have a WordPress, and I need to move it over because I do have I've been tinkering on like a personal site that uses a GitHub action to convert. It's a static website, but if you dump something into the blog folder, it will convert that and push it out to the static site. So,
there's a dozen different ways to do this. The key thing is, as an employee of a company, you'll need to work with the rest of the IT team to figure out infrastructure, right? Because you'll want this, blogs.companyname.com. You'll want that top level domain established. And then B, again, if you're working for a company, there's going to be other folks that are going to want to have some influence over it, right? One of the things we talk about in the pattern is, for example, you're probably going to need to have a conversation with the legal team.
Yeah.
When we were at Rocket, we had exactly this problem. The legal team had a very, very overarching definition of all the different things that we could not talk about because they were proprietary to the company.
Yeah.
And things like Markdown and servers, and it was just wildly overly restricted.
They thought like very generic things were their secret sauce. It's like, I can't talk about a database.
Right.
They're like, no. And I'm like, database doesn't separate us from our competition.
Yeah.
They're like, well, it actually kind of does. I'm like Azure doesn't separate. I mean, AWS doesn't. So they had this weird, and they even transcended over into like technical leadership. I think they were, that place was, well, we won't.
Well, I mean, part of the thing is if the legal team, depending upon how technically savvy the legal team is, right? If you're at a startup where there is no legal team, okay, nobody's going to say no to anything because there's probably not enough there for anybody to sue, period, right? But if you're at an established firm who's been around for 30 years, they have assets. And legal teams, much like accounting teams, tend to be very conservative by nature, right? Say no to everything until proven yes.
Yeah.
And that's what we had to do, right? We had to go and basically talk to others of the senior leadership. We rolled the CIO into a meeting who said essentially, yeah, no, none of this is proprietary to us, and I give my explicit approval except for these topics.
Yeah.
And then at that point, legal team said, okay, cool, right? Because most of the time, lawyers don't say no because they have a personal stake in it. They say no because they don't want to be on, they don't want to be on point for defending against something when they would rather have avoided.
We had to, at Rocket, we also had to go through the PR team too. So it was leadership, PR, then legal. So there were a lot. I mean, you could be facing, if you're, depending on the size of the company, there may be lots of hoops where I would write a blog post and it might not come out for 3 months.
Yeah.
Because
and that's part of why, as if you're part of a company, figuring out all of those relationships, figuring out all of those hoops. I mean, part of the reason why the PR team got involved there was because the PR team didn't have a blog. And there was a realization that, this is basically, this is where we get into the developer relations and public relations are both mechanically trying to do the same thing. And so there was some thoughts that the PR team would actually be able to help, in terms of some of the blog posts and whatnot. The big problem we ran into there was that the PR team was a little overwhelmed as well. And so they lacked some of the speed and agility. And look, I mean, at this point, we're now starting to talk about publishing pipelines, right? And some companies are going to be very quick and nimble with their publishing pipelines. Some are not, which means that you just have to adjust for it. If you know that something's coming out in March and you have a publishing pipeline that's 3 months, you write it in December so that it can come out around March. And you work with, other places I've been, the marketing team owns the blog, or the engineering team owns the blog. If the engineering team owns it, it's probably deeply neglected because they've got better things to do than to write stuff. If the marketing team owns the blog, chances are it's filled with a bunch of non-technical announcements about stuff, product releases. There's all sorts of those different factors that come into play. And, you just have to kind of sort those out. And it helps if you have a champion who says, this is what I want out of the blog, and this is the velocity that I want. Because that was kind of the secret, at Rocket was, okay, we want to see two blog posts a month. And everybody went, oh, wow, that's faster than what we were thinking. But okay, you're the CIO, so we're going to make that happen. I was
going to say, the higher the champion, the better. I was at a company once where the engineering team actually was on point for writing blog posts. They had a rotation where when you were on call, you didn't have to do your day-to-day. You were on call, so you were working on, tech debt and things, but then you were also responsible for writing a blog post. And so that engineering team did. But you said something, Ted, that made me think about success, like success metrics on blog posts. Now, we all know about the vanity metrics of page views and reads, but how do you guys measure success aside from page views of a blog post? So what makes a blog post successful?
One of the metrics that I liked was, I forget how exactly it's best phrased, but it's basically how long do they stay on the page?
Yes. That's it.
And there's similar markers you can do, like, do they actually scroll to the end of the page?
Yeah. I believe in the book we call it time on page.
What's that?
In the book we call it time on page.
Yeah. And I like those simply because they tend to be a little bit better reflective of just, I've actually sat here and read it. It's not going to be perfect because if your blog gets consumed by an RSS reader, you lose the ability to track any of that.
No.
Yep.
And if, today, if ChatGPT reads your blog, right, again, that's basically an RSS reader. So it's going to slurp it really quickly.
Yeah.
The other one, though, is essentially the next click, right? Where did they go after this? Because if they read your blog post and then immediately jump on and they click on the link that takes them to the GitHub where the code is posted,
or a product page,
right? Some sort of call to action, right? You're like, go visit the thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think the other thing is the comments that you get, the what do you call it?
You thinking like feedback?
Like engagement?
Yeah, feedback, the engagement, yes.
Yeah.
How much engagement
is key.
I think that between seeing how long people stay on the page and how much they engage, that usually gives you a pretty good idea that and then when other people link to your blog post, what's the name of that?
Reference rate is
callbacks.
what we refer to it. Yeah.
What
reference rate is
callbacks
or callbacks.
Yeah. So that,
or is reference rate different than callbacks?
So there's the notion of like how frequently are you linked to, right? Which I think of as reference rate. How often in academia, that's often like your citation rate. How often is your publication cited, right? Callbacks in some respects, I haven't heard that term quite as frequently, but I can imagine that being how often do people return to your material, or how often do they come back to it because they want to get more.
My thing was, it's more about the, like, if other people are writing and linking their content back to your content, I find that is a big win. Also, I'm just scanning through the the metrics of the pattern. Click-through rate is a good one. Reference rate, time on. I think. Oh, you know what? I found a bug. I found a bug in the pattern. We have time on page twice in the metrics.
Do we really?
Oh,
yeah. Time on page.
Oh, wow. Maybe nobody will notice it.
And you're right. And we even go better on the second one. So whoever is reading along while you're watching our podcast, go to the second time on page. You can just scratch out that first time on page.
Yeah. Social shares. I don't know if social media shares and reference are as big as they used to be.
Well, I think this is going to get back to what is the future of social media in a world with, agents and whatnot running around. And I think, very honestly, particularly given some of the backlash that people are building up around AI, there's a lot. There's a great photo I saw. I think it was either in Reddit or LinkedIn or somewhere, but it's a poster in an Irish pub that says that they will not allow any band to perform there if AI generated the poster, because Ireland's foremost college of the arts is right next door, and it's not a good look, lads, is literally how they put it. But there's a lot of this buildup, right, where people are saying, AI is good for some stuff, but not much, and I don't want any part of it. So I think the social media, like how often does your blog post get picked up by people inside of a social media, whether it's X or whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's something else? I think that's something to keep an eye on, because that provides a measurement of the reach, because that is one of the things with blogs that we really don't have as good of a view on, because they get picked up by RSS aggregators and they get picked up by all these other tools, page scrapers and whatnot, that we don't have metrics to track, right? We don't have the facilities to track.
Yeah.
But if somebody links to it from within, if someone posts something on, and I think LinkedIn is probably the best business social media out there.
Yeah.
A lot of us used to use Twitter back in the day to post this stuff back and forth, but then Twitter turned to X and X turned into a dumpster fire. And we don't do that as much anymore, I don't think. But there hasn't really been a better replacement for it. Reddit would be another good place to try.
I think Reddit seems to be the next.
Yeah, Reddit or Hacker News.
But those even have their own art to them, right? That are completely different than X and LinkedIn, to where you have to be a lot more organic, right? It can't be this sort of coordinated effort. But if it is a coordinated effort, it has to be very organic. For anything to be seen on Hacker News or even on Reddit.
So we've been talking about the publication pipeline and stuff, but the other thing about blog posts is the organization of the actual content. And so let me explain that. I'll kind of take us down a different path. When I was at JetBrains, we had very rigid standards on what the blog post was supposed to accomplish. And we all could write it in our own voice and everything. But when we were embedding images, we had to do 2K. We had to make sure our images were like snapshot in 2K, not blown up, not taken small and then blown up to 2K, but they had to actually be 2K, because when we pushed it through, and then we had WordPress, and when WordPress would publish it, it would downscale the image for publication for embedding inside the blog post. But then when you clicked on it, it would show in full 2K scale, so that if there was code or if we were showing like our IDE, you could see in detail all of everything in the IDE, and it wasn't blurry. So that's the other thing that people have to think about is how you're embedding images in your blog posts. You don't want them blurry. You want them in a scale that is a little more like, if I were to when I do blog posts, I try to do it in a HD scale. So 1080 by, I think I used to do mine in 1080 by 1200 or there was some method to my madness, but I would always do twice as big and then embed it down to be smaller and blah, blah, blah. So think about that, because the thing that you don't want is crappy pictures, or if you do video, that's another thing. We did a lot of GIFs. So if we were demoing something, we would do GIFs, and it was the same thing. We would have very large scale that was downscaled for presentation in the blog post itself. So you have to really, and if you're at a company, have standards, write a blog post standard document that everyone has to follow.
And also, branching off of what you said, Woody, don't underestimate the power of pictures and the power of diagrams, right? Like a picture, what they say, a picture speaks 1,000 words, right? I mean, that way the reader can visualize it. When they're scanning that blog post, they can visualize the point you're trying to make, and then that picture sticks with them. So yeah,
you have to think
that's
about,
why we would do. Go ahead, Ted.
Well, I was just going to say two things about pictures. Number one, you now start to get into a little bit of a layout game, right? Because if you just have wall of text and then a big picture and then wall of text, it's actually hard to read, which means now you just start thinking about how you flow the text around the pictures and whatnot. But the other thing that I really want to call out about pictures, video, God help you if you do any audio to play in the background. Please don't do that, but I've run across it. Again, IP ownership, right? A lot of people, especially companies that are trying to operate on a budget, they'll just go and grab random images off of the internet and make a copy, and then later find that they have violated intellectual property because they borrowed, they went into, they went into Google, they said, find me an image of, and it found some images, and they're actually stealing from a published photographer's, portfolio. Now all of a sudden that photographer finds it, does a DMCA takedown, and now your company
sues, or worse, they sue for monetary damages.
Yeah. And the other part of this is, again, we come back to the lovely topic of AI, right? The other thing people will do is they'll walk up to ChatGPT or one of these other ones and say, draw me a picture of. Look, if you want to use stock footage, just go to shutterstock.com, do a search, pay the fee. Just pay the fee. It's so much cleaner in the long run to be able to produce that receipt and say, nope, these images are all free and clear, or do what we did and bring on an illustrator as a co-author, right? And then it all just works out.
Yeah.
Thanks, David.
Yeah. But you do have to worry about everything. You have to, and I've seen people just blatantly copy a blog post and push it off on their blog. I've had lots of.
Don't.
I mean,
just don't do that.
But don't.
This
do
is
that.
where the legal team can be your friend,
right? Yeah.
Where they can actually do some of this legwork for you, and or tell you what the company currently, because the marketing team undoubtedly has already experienced a lot of this. They have to have people who have done graphic assets. They have to have people who have done some of these sorts of search. They're going to want to be a part of this, if nothing else, just to make sure that your blog follows, at least to some degree, the corporate marketing branding guidelines.
Colors. Right? Yep.
So borrow from that, leverage what they've done and say, hey, where can we go for, and if you need to produce architectural diagrams, Mermaid is a great little DSL. And that guarantees that you're not stealing from anybody because you can show how it was produced as a part of your pipeline.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, these are all things that I think that, these are mistakes that people have made with their blog in the past that we are trying to steer people away from.
Yeah. Yep.
Because, it's really the kind of thing that people expect out of a company these days.
Exactly. So. Well, let's wind this down. Any last thoughts from you guys on blog posts?
Scott, you first.
I'll just reiterate what the 2 points that I had is that writing is the foundation of storytelling, and don't underestimate the power of pictures.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
I would definitely agree with that, particularly because for people who are trying to break into DevRel, for companies that are trying to break into market, right? It's the easiest thing in the world to stand up some blogs, get them written, and then, start pointing other things towards them, right? You give a talk, you point to your blog. You write an article, you point to your blog. You do something on LinkedIn, you point to your blog or the company's blog for all of these.
Yeah.
And that starts to build some of that momentum.
Yep. And my last point is proofread. If I read a blog post and it's horrible grammar and misspellings, I disregard it and I don't even worry about the content. It just so get someone who or just run it through Grammarly. I run stuff through Grammarly just to make sure that like I'm not missing commas and I'm not like just basic stuff. So proofread your stuff or have someone else proofread it before you send it out. Usually at companies, the marketing team or the PR team will proofread it for you, but don't be embarrassed. Just get it proofread before you hand it off to the next person.
That's professionalism.
I know
every bit as much as submitting something for a PR before it gets merged into main.
Yeah. But you would be very surprised how much stuff doesn't get proofread.
Oh no, I wouldn't.
I know. I know
because I run across it myself.
I know. Well, we're going to wind up this episode about blog posts, the pattern. If you have comments, please put them down in the comment for this video. Like it again, share it with your friends. If you're not following us, follow us, give us a thing, turn this on so you get notified, blah, blah, blah. And if there's a pattern that you like in the book that you want us to talk about, we'll talk about whatever pattern people want us to. So yell and scream about a certain pattern, or if you don't agree with us, scream about that. But until the next time, I will say goodbye, and I'll let the guys say goodbye also, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, y'all.